I'm super excited this week because I'm back with Halley Sutton and we're
Hi.
dancing. If you're watching us on YouTube, that's the plug to go watch on YouTube. And we were just talking about you are putting together a newsletter right now, and you asked me a bunch of questions. And one of your questions was, what do I wish more people asked on Instagram?
Mhm.
And I was like, what did you read when you were a kid? And so I answered it, and you and I both read the book that I answered with. And then you thought it would be a really cool idea to have, why am I blanking? To do an episode about books that we read as kids. I'll get there. And I love
Yeah.
the idea. So,
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited for this conversation. So, first of all, thank you for being part of my author newsletter and my new kind of segment of it called Tastemaker Salon, where I'm speaking with people in the Bookstagram and book talk and book blog world, because I think you guys have like a lot of insight. First of all, you all have very interesting stories, and I love
yeah.
hearing about the books that like you love. And then I also think you have a lot of insight for authors, and actually like a lot of the people who read my author newsletter are my author friends. And so I'm like,
Great.
what can you teach us that might be beneficial to us? So I'm excited about it. Thank you.
I didn't even know about that, like that background of it, but that's a really cool idea. It does help authors to know what readers like care about or interested in, all of that.
Totally. And like the Ashley Winstead is one of my readers, and like so she will be totally. I know. And like every time we talk, it just turns into the Ashley Winstead appreciation fan cast. But like she deserves it, you know.
Sometimes we just can't help ourselves.
Can't at all. But yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation today. Like I spent a lot of time the last couple of days like jotting down some of my childhood favorites, and I can't wait to hear about yours and like maybe talk about the way that like our tastes have changed or like shaped us into the readers and writers we are today.
Yeah. And so what was interesting when I started looking for mine or thinking about mine was I've kind of mentioned on here before, but like what I was exposed to as a kid is a lot different than what I choose to like watch and read now.
Oh,
So
totally.
I like keep it short. I had an extremely sheltered childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, are any of these how much are these gonna translate? And actually, I really do have a bunch that like translate into what I love now. So that was kind of fun to find that out.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I can't wait to hear them. And when I was looking at mine, thinking about it, I was actually like, I mean, not surprised because I remember them and I understand like why this is part of my personality, but like it's less actually mystery heavy than I would have guessed, given like how many mysteries I read now. A lot of historical fiction, like for younger. But I have like thoughts and theories about that, including the fact that like I figured out pretty early that like historical fiction was also a good vehicle for like romance or like horny scenes. And so I could be like, no, mom, I just want to learn about ancient Rome. But like I'm like flipping through for the dirty bits.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So cool. If you have a kid and they suddenly start getting very interested in historical fiction that's like a little too adult, like be tuned into that. Like yeah, totally.
Oh, that's so good. So yeah, if anyone is really getting into historical fiction as a kid, maybe we know why.
Just putting it out there. They are very dirty.
We may have talked about it. I don't know. It might have been someone else. Like, I always wish I would get more into historical fiction, but it kind of goes into that idea that sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I read more genres. And then I'm like, I have plenty to read. I don't need to be wishing that on myself. But
totally.
I've never gotten totally into it, but my sister-in-law loves it.
Totally. And to be fair, I read less of it now, although I'm still interested in it. But I think as a kid, I was just so fascinated by like I also read a lot of like fantasy and different stuff. And I think I liked like different worlds and times that you could really inhabit. And you got that a lot with historical fiction, right? Like you're like stepping into the shoes of somebody else. Like, I don't know if you remember these or if you had access to them or you read them, but there were all those like Dear America diary books.
Oh yeah.
It used to be like, and then and like I loved those. Those were so my jam because it was like such an interesting window into just like a slice of history, just being like hungry for knowledge. And I think that's what it was when I was a kid. And also, the romance and horny bits.
Well, now that you're saying this about historical fiction, it's like all coming back to me that like actually, so I have always been a huge reader. Like I
Mhm.
loved reading from the get-go. And so actually the like fun fact about me that was told for a long period of my childhood was that I was reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder books before I went
Oh,
to
yes.
kindergarten. So like I
Oh,
went to
amazing.
kindergarten and was like carrying my little chapter book around with me, like, when are we gonna have reading time?
Oh my
So
God, that's incredible.
I was obsessed with the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. I think because there were like 20 of them. I think I read all of
Totally.
them,
Yeah.
like, for a couple of years.
I loved those books too. I don't remember if I read all of them, but I definitely read a
Mhm.
bunch of them. And like
Yeah.
totally Ma and Pa and like everybody
Yes.
on the prairie. Like, oh, I was so
Yes.
into that. And I used to like, when you're like playing make believe with your friends, it was always like Laura Ingalls Wilder, like, we're on the prairie and we're gathering
Yes.
supplies for winter.
Yes.
Being a kid is
Totally.
weird.
And then the show, like, I like watched it was
Yes.
called Little House on the Prairie. The show
Yeah.
was. Watched that show so many times. Like that probably would have been considered a comfort show of my childhood.
Oh, totally. Pa was a DILF also. Like, we need to be talking about this more as like in
Dude,
America.
what's tripping me out is just like this morning I got on TikTok and someone had pulled a clip of like when someone like hurts Ma and he's like getting mad, and like all the comments were like, how did this is just me finding out that Pa was like hot, or like that Pa was actually a DILF. So that's hilarious that you just said that, because I just saw it in a TikTok today and I was like, damn, I just wasn't thinking about him that way back then.
I know, me either, but like now in retrospect for sure. And like, yeah, now I wonder if like I've become the TikTok algorithm in our
Right.
conversation.
Same. I love TikTok so much. And Anne of
It's
Green
so great.
Gables. So I actually was kind of historical fiction-y.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Anna Green
Mhm.
Gables was totally great. Did you watch there was like movie adaptations of those too?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
not
I
the
was really
Netflix
into
one, but
those.
like the
No, the
one way
older
back
ones.
when. Yes,
Yes, yes.
I did. And I thought
Yeah,
Gilbert was just the best thing to ever happen to the world.
totally. He was such a babe. And then there was like her friend Diana, and she accidentally got her drunk on like raspberry cordial, and they're like, "You're a bad
Yes.
influence." Like,
Raspberry cordial. Oh my gosh. Oh, I like can't even believe how I'm like, wow, that memory was just in my brain, but I just haven't thought about it in that long.
totally, totally. Say like it's fun because now we're like unearthing stuff, right? Like I have a whole
Yes.
list of books here, and
Yeah.
like I want to talk about them, but also like us just riffing on this too. It's
I
like bringing a whole
know.
bunch of things to mind. Like, oh
That's what I was
yeah,
just thinking. I was like, I didn't
yeah,
have any of these listed. They've just like come into my mind.
totally.
Oh, I love that. It is cool, like having read your whole life, all the
Mhm.
things that like stick with you.
Totally, totally. And like that they're still there in like the library of your mind at, some point that you
Yeah.
can call back up for sure.
Yes. Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
one that I absolutely couldn't think of the title for. Like,
Oh no.
I remember kind of like that the cover was like yellow, like
Okay.
heavy, yellow heavy, I guess. And that it was about a girl who kind of like lived in an abandoned castle. And that
Oh.
was about all that I got. But I remember loving it, and I remember like where I was reading it in our
Mm.
like second or third house or whatever. Couldn't think of the title though. So we'll see. Maybe it just pops up since I'm in that mind frame.
Totally. Or maybe like some intrepid internet sleuth will be able to be like, that's what it
That's
was.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
My something the castle. See, it's starting to come back. It's starting to come back.
I capture
Um,
the castle? Not I capture the castle.
it might be that.
Oh, really? By Dodie Smith, I think.
I'm gonna look it up. I feel like it is that.
Oh my gosh. If I just cracked it, I'm
I
gonna
think
like
you did. Yes, this is totally it. It's a green and yellow. It's a green and yellow cover.
Wow, I feel very proud of myself for pulling that one
was
out.
amazing.
And she's
Yep.
like, she's got her sister who kind of like gets involved with these brothers and wants to marry one kind of for money, but is in love with the other
Yes.
one. And like they have like a stepmother Topaz. Like it's all starting to come back to me.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it says it's all written in diary entries.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you got it. That's what it was. It's
Amazing.
probably
Well,
what
maybe I need to reread that one. I haven't thought of that book in years, but like that was a good one. That was so good.
that's what I was thinking of. I was just saying that to my husband before we recorded because I was pulling all of these up and I was like, I want to go back and reread them, but like currently, like the way life has just been busy. Like, I have a book that I started 9 days ago that I haven't finished, and I can't remember the last time anything like that happened with my reading schedule. So I'm like, I don't
Totally.
want to do it right now, but like sometime I need to like start sneaking in some of these, like, because it's so memorable in my mind from so long
Totally.
ago. Like, it'd be cool to reread it
It
and see
really
what I get
would.
from it now.
Yeah, for sure. But I also know what you mean. I mean, I have a bookshelf behind me of books like to be read, and there's a part that's
Yeah.
like, should I go back? But like, I don't know. It'd be so fun to revisit them. You know,
Hmm.
like we kind of started this conversation. Should we dive into our lists?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so
I guess.
we we kind of part of what sparked this was when you asked that great question, like posed that question of like what books did you love as a kid, and then you mentioned two books, and I actually am not as familiar with the other one, so I would love to hear
Hmm.
about that. But then when you
Yeah.
mentioned Ella Enchanted, it like unlocked a whole chamber in my mind of like thinking like I loved that book, and like I'm so excited to talk
Yeah.
about it with you, and like I
Yes.
haven't read it in years, but that like I checked it out from the library like 4 or 5 times. I was so into it, you know?
Yes. I had a paperback version of it and I reread it over and over and over. Like I don't reread books now, but
Yeah.
I reread it over and over and over again. And when I was looking back on it for this, obviously then just like thinking about what the story's about. For anyone who doesn't know, it is like a Cinderella retelling,
Mhm.
essentially. But this princess is born, but her fairy godmother gives her the gift of obedience.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, to me, right off the bat, I could see the problems there, but
Sure.
the fairy godmother thinks it's a gift.
Right.
But like she has to obey if anyone tells her to do anything. So she's like so easily controlled. And then Prince Charming, of course, Prince Charmant, actually, in
Yes.
this one, Charmant, kind of gets introduced where like same thing as Cinderella, like her dad dies, so now it's like
Mhm.
evil step mom and sisters, and she's just like the scullery maid, but she ends up becoming friends with Prince Charmant sometime when he like passes through. So that's kind of the inciting incident of like someone she cares about enough to want to be able to break
Mhm.
free of the
Mhm.
curse that has like kept her just having to obey to anyone who knows that they can just tell her what to do and she'll do it. And when I was thinking back on it, I'm like, what an empowering story,
Oh,
actually. Like,
totally. It's so empowering. And I agree with you. And I think that like culturally often the narrative for little girls, young women has been like obedience, make yourself small, make yourself acceptable. And like even in the original Cinderella myth, right? Like the question
mhm,
is like, why doesn't she just run away? Like I know it's not that easy and like
mhm.
you know, at a time when women didn't have resources, but also it's kind of weird that she just goes along with like
Yeah,
her step sisters being like, you got to clean the floors. So like this
right.
gave like, I think the genius of Ella Enchanted was that it sort of like answered that question. And that it also like made her very much a heroine, gave her a quest.
Mhm.
And then when she ultimately like, spoiler alert, but this book's been out for 30 years.
Yes.
Um, and it's Cinderella, spoiler alert, when she does finally break free of it, it's like such an empowering moment. Like it was, I don't know, I think it like you and I probably loved it for like some of the exact same reasons. I feel like it was such a
Yes.
great book to read as like a young girl
Yes.
and like have as, I don't know, an example or like a fairy tale that didn't feel like she was so passive, and that
Yes.
like she and the prince actually like in this one get to know each other pretty deeply
Yeah.
before like the whole goes to the balls and falls in love with her, which is like also
Mhm.
sort of a weird thing. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I just thought it was so well done. And like,
It's so
I
good.
wonder, I think that there are probably books that we could revisit that may not hold up very well, but I think a lot of
Mhm.
this would still hold up pretty well
It really
in
will.
2024, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, I feel like it's been out long enough, and also I don't know that anyone's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm dying to pick this up right now." There's also a movie made with Anne Hathaway with it.
Which we got to talk about for sure.
We have to talk about that too.
Yes.
But it is like her moment, like she's so scared to be around him because
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't know about it. She's like scared that like someone could like order her to kill him, like if there were like assassin whatever, people who wanted to kill the royal court or whatever. And so yeah, I'm just gonna go with a spoiler. Basically, when he does ask her to like be with him, she actually like it's what she wants, and he's
Mm-hmm.
even telling her like, why not like be with me, and she says no, and it's the first time that she's ever been able to like not not be like stuck under the curse.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like this beautiful thing because like the reason she finally felt like she would say no is because she didn't want to hurt, oh boy, what's my camera doing, um it's just gonna be like this. The the reason she could finally say no is because she actually is so concerned that she would hurt someone else. So it's even
Mm-hmm.
like this selfless act that like she finally is able to do it. And then it's also not that he broke the curse.
Right.
She breaks it. Like
Totally. Totally. She
just so
breaks it. She
cool.
gets to own her autonomy in that moment. And even though she does want to be with him and eventually does, like the
Yeah.
fact that she's like, no, and it's this triumphant moment. I mean, it was cool to read as a
Oh
kid
my
for sure. I
gosh.
loved that
I
book.
love it so much. I
Yeah.
get chills listening to it because there's, again, I don't, just because we're talking about my childhood, I don't want to talk about it at length ad nauseum
Mm-hmm.
necessarily for people, but very sheltered childhood, as I mentioned earlier. And I was just so scared of going
Mm-hmm.
against like a lot of religious rules
Mm-hmm.
and just like all of my parents' rules for a really long time. And it actually, if I'm being completely honest, had a lot to do with meeting Tyler. That finally I met my husband when I was 19
Mm-hmm.
and in college. And if you know anything about controlling parents, I'm just gonna say narcissistic parents,
Mm-hmm.
them not having control like really triggers all of the issues. So like all of the issues came up just because there was
Yeah.
someone else introduced into the system. And so like now when I look back at this story, it's like so cool that like I loved it so much as a kid when
Mm-hmm.
like that was how I felt, that was how my life felt. And it really
Mm-hmm.
was the first time that I was like, this is getting out of hand and I'm old enough to walk away from this. So
Totally.
I'm just always gonna love this story. It's always gonna give me little chill bumps. So
I love that. I think that that's like the very best of literature, and what literature can do for us as
mhm.
kids is like nurture this seed of something that like maybe you don't have the tools to fully grasp when you're like 11, but then when
Yeah.
you're 19, like it like keeps something alive in you that maybe
Yeah.
I mean, I think that always lived in you, but like it maybe helps kind of
Yes.
like build it.
Yeah. So that like yeah, I think so too. I think it was mostly always there, and I just knew I had to get out of the house and I needed to be able
Uh-huh.
to be self-sufficient on my own to be able to fight back. There wasn't going to be any use in doing it when I was like 15 and still living in the house. So
Totally.
it is fun to think about like the stuff that you did read that maybe helps you in the moment when you finally can have agency, like helps you have agency.
Totally. Totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
did
beautiful.
have a little show and tell thing as
Oh,
well.
yes. Okay.
So it this is, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to totally see it, but this is my this is
Oh,
my little writer's journal
oh
back
my gosh.
from 2004 is when this was like initially written. I was initially writing in it. Um and like it even says for the YouTube people who might, nope, it's too bright. I
Yeah.
might put images of this up in the YouTube version. So go to YouTube, but it says my writer's notebook and I was writing down books that like I wanted to write.
Oh my gosh.
And right after I read Ella Enchanted, it says Cinderella Twisted Fairy Tales. I enjoy them and I hope to write them. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
I
how
love that.
cute. So I
How
was
cute.
like
How
so
beautiful.
happy to see that that was like it just meant that much to me as a book, basically.
Totally, totally. I love that. And I think I remember having something similar too, where it like was one of the first versions of like a fractured or retold fairy tale that I like really
Hmm.
connected with. And like I remember that kind of like blowing my little like baby writer's brain of like, oh, you can take this like story and then like shift it or twist it.
Yeah.
And like that's still something I find like so interesting and like creatively generative as a writer too,
Hmm.
of like taking some story that we know culturally, or like some like, you know, with my first book, The Lady Upstairs, something that I was doing like very specifically was I was taking like tropes of noir and then kind of like shifting them or like writing against them or being like,
Hmm.
I'm annoyed that Raymond Chandler did this, so I'm going to do this, you know, like,
Yes.
so yeah. And I thought that was like so like revelatory that like you could
Hmm.
do that. And like, I
Yeah.
remember Ella Enchanted being like an early example of a book I read where I
Yeah.
was just like, you can do this, you know, like
Hmm.
it was so cool.
It's so cool. Yeah. And then it did get a movie adaptation that is like,
Yes.
it felt quirkier,
Mhm.
and I feel like it doesn't completely match the book, not necessarily in a bad way.
No, not necessarily in a bad way at all. I don't remember loving the movie. I don't remember hating
I
it, but
wasn't obsessed with it.
I
Yeah.
wasn't either, and which was kind of a bummer because I was so obsessed with the book. And it was
Hmm.
like they did do some quirkier stuff with it. Like I think they kind of made it a musical at
That's what I was
times
about to bring
too.
up. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like all of those are cool and interesting choices, but I did feel like parts of the things that I really loved about the book didn't necessarily make it through. So like it
I
almost feels like
agree.
its own separate thing. Like
It really does.
yeah.
I completely agree. Like, they exist as two very separate things in my mind.
Yeah.
But if you like
Me too.
musicals in Anne Hathaway, you'll probably like it.
Totally, and
I'm
Hugh
not a musical
Dancy.
girly.
I am, but not, that one didn't spark me
Hmm.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
More Phantom of the Opera. Read
Oh,
lots
yeah.
of
That's a very different feel.
horny fan fiction of Phantom of the Opera as a kid too.
I see there's a
A
theme.
theme emerges today.
Oh my gosh. Well, we definitely both loved Ella Enchanted.
Oh yeah, it was
That
so
much is
good.
clear.
It was so
Yeah.
good. So tell me about the other book that you mentioned, or I think it was a
Okay.
series, The Uglies, that you
Yeah. So
mentioned
the
in
other
the yeah.
one I mentioned to you it was called the Uglies Trilogy.
Hmm.
Um, and it's by someone named Scott Westerfeld. But
Hmm.
it is basically about a girl named Tally who is about to turn 16, and she's really excited because in this world, when you turn 16, you undergo an operation to turn from a repellent ugly into a stunning pretty.
Wow.
So there's this like divide between everyone under 16 and above 16.
Hmm.
And then as well, you basically move to a whole new city as well, that is
Hmm.
like a high-tech paradise where your only job is to have fun.
Hmm.
um but then she makes a new friend, someone named Shay, and Shay is what we need in all dystopian sci-fi thrillers. She's the doubter who thinks
Yes.
there's something a little sus
I
about
was
becoming a
I
pretty.
Yes, I was with Shay on that one where I was like, this sounds
Hmm.
too good to
This
be
doesn't
true.
sound right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Shay runs away before she's forced to have surgery because she just turned 16. And Tally, what happens here? Oh, the authorities then pull Tally in for questioning and tell her that she has to go out and find her friend and bring her back and force her to be a pretty, or they'll never turn her into a pretty.
Hmm.
So the first book is Tally basically searching for Shay. And then the next ones are called Pretties and Specials. Because there is
Mm.
like there's I can't remember what the specials are, but I think they're like special like skills that you can have, that you can
Uh-huh.
learn surgically or whatever. But I devoured this. This looks like it came out in 2005, the initial series. Like, I remember getting it from like the book fair, I'm pretty sure.
Love
And
that. The book fair was the best day. Like,
I know. I was like, I don't need erasers. I need books.
right.
Um, but it was so good. Like this is one of the ones that I also really want to go back and reread because I feel like there's a
Mhm.
lot about it that I would like pretty much the same. But this definitely translates into like the sci-fi that I end up really loving still, and like
Totally.
the way that the certain speculative fiction basically like I don't get into really dense sci-fi. So like the best example I have right now is I adored Dune and Dune 2
Mhm.
movie wise, fantastic. But I completely know that that is like way too dense of a sci-fi book for me to enjoy reading.
Totally. Totally.
So I don't get into that sci-fi, but like this kind of stuff where it's like asking
Mhm.
about like what are we going to do with technology and like what are the implications of technology, even like
Totally.
society's obsession with how you visually present yourself. It really has like a
Mhm.
lot of the same themes in it that I love reading now. So I feel like it really informed a lot of that for me too.
I love that. And that's like such an interesting question, and like frighteningly feels more relevant in 2024 than
Yeah.
maybe ever, when it's like Ozempic or BBLs,
Mhm.
or you can modify your appearance in all these ways, or even just face tune yourself. And like,
Yes.
yeah, that's really interesting. And it feels like very, when we haven't just, I think we're close in age. So I'm assuming we were kind of coming up around the same time, but
Yeah.
like there was that whole kind of boom of like the dystopian fiction like this, of like this and like
Yes.
Hunger Games and like
Mhm.
Divergent and all these different things where it was this kind of like perfect society and the cracks underneath. And like that's still a really
Mhm.
compelling story and still feels frighteningly relevant. And I'm putting this one on my TBR.
I know. I really want. I'm like even looking at the covers, and I'm like, man, I remember just love it, and like waiting a year for the next one because like they definitely both end on cliffhangers
Just
was like
torture.
terrible. Hmm.
Yeah, totally. I
Totally.
remember that feeling too. And just being like, a
Yeah.
whole year, like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hunger Games came out. I was born in '92,
Okay.
but Hunger Games came out when I was like, I think at the end of high school slash right at the
Yeah.
beginning of college, and I
Mhm.
just didn't quite end up jumping on it. And
Same.
then I can't remember what happened. Oh, I think it was when I had COVID in like 2022. I saw that the whole series was on Netflix. I ended up
Mhm.
watching them all. And then when the prequel came out as movie this year,
Yes.
we went and saw that, and that was so good. And it
Oh,
made
I
me
haven't
I was
seen the
like,
prequel yet. Is
oh,
it?
it
It's
is
oh, okay.
so she's just the way she like talks about such large um like social questions about war and
Mhm.
who actually wins in war slash if anyone actually wins in war, and how we try to mask or control mass amounts of people. She's
Yeah.
so good at doing that while also having these really compelling characters and character arcs that also make you feel conflicted. Her
Mhm.
storytelling is just so amazing. Like even like Tyler hadn't seen any of the Hunger Games when we went and saw the prequel, and he was even like that was good. And so then he watched the movies, but he finally basically we saw the prequel, and I was like, I think I want to read the books. And it literally was like I had to like actually like really think about if I was going to do it because I knew I had a bunch of net galleys lined up at the time. This is like
Yeah.
November of last year, and I was like, no, I'm just going to do it. So I read the trilogy like straight through.
Mhm.
It is just so good. Like the story arcs, the questions she brings up, like it's just fantastic. It's really good dystopian fiction.
Okay. Okay. I mean, certainly read the first two Hunger Games
Hmm.
books, but I haven't read the prequel, and I don't know. I certainly know what happens in it, but I can't remember if
Hmm.
I actually read the book or if I just saw the movie at
Yeah.
the end. But yeah, she does a really good job, and I love like Katniss is such a like strong female lead and like empowering, especially
Yeah.
because like okay, I don't know where you stand on this, and I'm not trying to hate on something that people love, but like
I'm excited.
compared to say Bella in Twilight, who is a pretty
Right.
passive character, And like this was coming out at a very similar time, and I was more like Katniss. Like this is the figure
Yes.
we need, not,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I
Not
see
to
both
say, I
sides.
mean, Twilight is very like wonderful, and I know it like
Mhm.
connects with a lot of people, but in terms of
Mhm.
character, I definitely ship more Katniss than
I'm with
Bella.
you on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was like I obviously loved, here we are. Ashley's Midnight is the Darkest Hour. And
So
I know it
good.
was a little inspired by Twilight, but I still
Hmm.
even feel like Ruth had more agency than Bella. So I feel like that's why I
Totally.
also liked it. So it's like I see the merits of Twilight where it's like
Hmm.
it's okay to like as a girl feel enamored with someone to that level. But
Totally.
I did feel like Ruth was like still a little more empowered in
And
Midnight is
like,
the Darkest Hour.
and more, I don't know. I don't want this to turn into like a Halley hates
No.
on Bella Swan, which is
No.
also, I'm sorry, the most ridiculous name.
Oh, it is.
Beautiful swan. But like, yeah, I like, it's, I think that there's like unfair hate that gets piled on Bella about the like
Yes.
romance and obsession, and the way that that kind of feeds a certain misogyny, and like a thing like, oh, women only care about this. And I think that's unfair. But
Yes.
I do think that like, say Ruth in Midnight is the Darkest Hour is like more rounded and compelling to me for
Mhm.
various reasons than Bella herself was, that are not necessarily attached to the hate that like
Mhm.
it like the easy dunking people do on Twilight, which I think is
Yeah.
unfair for
Right.
sure.
Right. I agree. But yeah, Katniss is that bitch is the best way I could say it. Like she just is.
100%.
I love like even the way the love triangle is handled and the way that
Hmm.
she's also like this is not the point of the book. Like some
No.
people I think I may have not read it because I thought it was so much of just like a love triangle thing too.
Hmm.
Where like it's not what I look for in my adult life. I don't read romance.
Totally.
Nothing against it. I just don't unless Ashley writes it.
Yeah. I
Here we
mean,
are
and then
again. um but she just like she actually doesn't need Peta nor
hmm Gail.
Gail. All I could think of was Liam.
I know. It's
um,
Liam Hemsworth.
um yeah, so she doesn't need either of them. And that's like very apparent through the entire book.
Hmm.
And I actually even did I did a TikTok after I read the series because like there are tons of TikToks about them about
Sure.
Hunger Games at the time because the prequel was out, and a lot of people were talking about like you thought Katniss was like cold and like whatever in the movies. You should hear how unhinged and like angry and distrustful her thoughts are. Like it's like a common kind of joke that was on TikTok. So I'm like, what is this going to be like? And then I read it and I'm like, I wouldn't trust that person either. I wouldn't trust that person either. I was like totally team
Right.
Katniss on this. I was like, I don't know what this says about me, but to me, I think Katniss is spot on.
No, I agree. And also, like, I mean, I haven't seen these TikToks, so it's not really fair for me to comment on
Yeah.
them. But like, what I remember of Katniss is the context she's raised in is that like every year, children, or every couple of years, children are sent to
Yeah.
die. Like, I don't think that would foster me being like, God, the world is a
Trustworthy.
beautiful place, and I should trust
Yeah.
everyone. Like, no.
Yeah. It would take, I wouldn't trust Peta either. Like it's like a staged relationship. They know that that's what's
Totally.
happening. I wouldn't just initially believe that he like cared about me enough to not kill me. I wouldn't
Totally.
trust anyone. Like,
And I
come
do
on.
love that what I remember about Peta as like
Mhm.
a sexy like detail is that like he smells like bread. And I was like,
Right?
yes.
I mean,
this
you
is
smell
this
like
is
bread.
great.
You can make bread. You make cakes.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Like,
Red Boy's a winner for me.
yep, I'm on board. I am on board.
Yeah. Okay.
Um
My camera's
there we
just doing
go.
weird things. But yeah, Hunger Games, very,
Hunger
very
Games,
good too.
such a classic. Okay,
So
can
what
I
did you
share?
read?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the next one I have on my list is The Ruby and the Smoke by Philip Pullman, which is a quartet that's called the Sally Lockhart Quartet. And Philip Pullman is more famous for the His Dark Materials books, which I actually tried to read and didn't really connect with, but I was obsessed with the Sally Lockhart series. Sally was kind of this like 1800s, late 1800s proto-feminist living in London. And the first book is she's kind of solving a mystery. I think her like uncle has died or has gone missing or something. And she kind of collects these band of characters and they kind of wind up getting in over their head. I mean, it's like, it's kind of a combination mystery adventure type thing, like kind of like a Victorian London Indiana Jones a little bit, like not so archaeological, but like kind of like going on quests and fighting the powers that be. And she had this love interest, Fred, and something very bad happens to Fred that like fucked me up for like a while. But like, I know, sorry. But I was so into those books. And what I remember, and like, I think this is like one of the things that I think about when I think about like what made me a writer, was that I was like so obsessed with her, thought she was so cool that I would write her letters because I wanted her to know about my life the way that she knew that like I knew about her life because I'd like read it.
Yes.
I didn't mail the letters, you know, so like we're not talking like full childhood psychosis, but I would like write her like, and she was like this, like I said, kind of this like early feminist and was like, women need to get the vote and I'm all about women's suffrage. And I like wrote her a letter and was like, good news, Sally, women have the vote now, you know?
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was like these books were really formative. Something about like the way I connected with that character. I was like, oh, I want to do this, you know, like I want to write characters that make people feel that much. And I don't know that that's actually what I've wound up doing. But like but it was like for sure like a significant step in my journey towards being a writer, was like being like, oh, this person is as alive to me as like my mom or my cousin, you know, like, and so that was like a big moment.
That is so cool. Yeah, it almost is like maybe like Nancy Drew meets Indiana Jones.
Yes, that's exactly. That's like a really good comp. Yes.
Are you able to hear my dogs losing their minds?
I can hear them a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait for a second. Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne.
Oh yeah, we have Bruce Wayne and Harley Quinn.
Oh my God, that's so cute. I like, I mean, first of all, Bruce name is a wonderful name for a dog. And I also like that it feels like you're calling him by like his full name, like Bruce Wayne, like, you know, get it together.
Yeah. And when Harley's bad, we're like, Harley Quinn.
That's amazing.
Like, his super Bruce is actually really derpy and like not quite a Bruce Wayne. And so we saw a meme of, I mean, we've had him for 10 years, so probably 10 years ago, where it was like, if Batman was high or something like that, and he's like, I'm Bruce Man, I'm Bat Wayne. And so we also call him Bat Wayne. So when he's being cute, we're like, Bat Wayne, you cute boy. He has he has all of the silly names.
I love that. I mean, I think that's what pets are for, is like just nickname generation, you know, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, I think we can segue us here.
Okay.
So, well, I did read Nancy Drew too. Didn't come up in my mind when I was thinking about these necessarily, but I definitely read a whole bunch of Nancy Drew. I almost said movies. I read a bunch of movies. I read a bunch of Nancy Drew books, but the mystery series, similar to what you were saying, that stood out to me that I remembered the most was called Sammy Keys. Well, the series is called Sammy Keys, but the first one was called Sammy Keys and the Hotel Thief. This came out in 1998. So
I somehow didn't read these.
Very young.
Yeah.
What?
I somehow didn't read these. So what was Sammy Keys about?
So
what's Sammy Keys' deal?
First one, I feel like she's like 12-ish years old, 12 or 13. And so this first one, it's pretty short, so I'll just read the synopsis. Graham's always told her those binoculars would get her into trouble. Now Sammy's witnessed a crime at the Heavenly Hotel, a light-fingered thief stealing $4,000 from Madame Nashira, the astrologer with the fire hazard hairdo. Thing is, while she was watching him, he was watching her too. And that's like the whole synopsis. But
that's
like
great.
12-year-old like trying to find clues the same way as Nancy Drew, but like in a more modern world. and there were so many books. It was another thing where like every time a new one came out, I was so excited.
I
Oh my
love
gosh,
that.
Sammy Keys and the Sisters of Mercy. I really remember that one.
Aw.
There's so many. It looks like they kept writing them. There are 18 of them now. I don't think I read
Wow.
18 of them.
That is
Yeah,
prolific.
2014. Like they wrote them until 2014. So
Hmm.
I feel like I read the first 4 or 5, but
Mm-hmm.
I was obsessed with them. Obviously, it's a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it reminds me of all the mysteries I read now, too.
Totally, totally. And I love in that description you just read the way that like whoever was writing that marketing copy, might have been the author, might
Hmm.
have been the publishing company. They tucked in like some really unique details in there too. So it gives me the sense
Yeah.
that it's going to be this kind of like quirky book full of like
Yeah.
really unique images and characters and stuff. Like that's great.
Yes. Yeah. I remember just devouring them. I would like I would read in the car. I remember reading this one in the car even just to like keep getting through the pages. I
Totally.
loved it so much. I loved it so
Aw.
much. And it is
God,
it is
that's
really similar to like it's kind of rear windowy with the whole like she
mm-hmm.
sees something happens. And I've definitely read some rear window
Yes.
retellings
Yes.
recently.
I actually just funny enough, this is like a weird segue, and this is
Hmm.
not child Halley, this is adult Halley, but just a couple weeks ago I actually read the short story Rear Window that
Mm.
the movie is based on. I read
Yeah.
that for the first time, and it's so funny because that is such a concept that's like done now, and I think still has like life in it, right? Like somebody witnesses a crime, gets involved, like da da da, but like
Hmm.
Rear Window set a very specific template for it too, but like that story still holds up. Like it is still
Yeah.
very like anxiety provoking, and
Yes.
it's a classic.
Have you seen the movie Watcher?
No,
Yes. It's
is
on
this the one?
Amazon.
Okay, no, I haven't seen it.
It's I think you would love it.
Hmm.
It's about a girl who moves Sweden to some foreign country with her kind of new boyfriend. I don't think they're married,
I have
basically.
heard of this. Yes.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
so
Okay.
good and freaky. Like it's
Okay.
also very freaky. And so she doesn't know what most people are saying around her. So there's this
Hmm.
like added like level of like anxiety about it all because
Hmm.
like we don't know they don't give subtitles either. So you're kind of in it
Totally.
with her that like you don't even always know what people are talking about. And she becomes convinced, I don't think this is a spoiler, that the guy across the street from them, they live in an apartment that has like these huge windows,
Hmm.
and she's convinced that he's been watching her, and her boyfriend is like, stop being hysterical, like we're just in a new place and like you're coming up with stuff. So it even pulls, I remember after I read it, or read it after I watched it, I of course then was like reading about it because that's my
Sure.
favorite thing to do after I watch something
Mhm.
too. And it even has homages to like stuff from the movie Rear Window,
Oh, I
but
love
like
that.
they're also gaslight. Is Gaslight the movie or
Yes,
gaslighting? Okay,
Gaslight. I think it's Gaslight. Yeah,
yeah, there's homages
Ingrid
to that
Bergman
too.
and cool,
And
very
then
cool.
there is a wild ending. So
You really
that's my
sold me. I
little
might be
truffle.
watching this. I might be watching this tonight. If I do, I
Yeah,
will like ping you afterwards and
please
let you
do.
know what I thought.
It was
So,
like Gare posted about it, and he and I had kind of just started talking on Bookstagram, and then he posted about it, and I watched it, and I was like, "This is amazing." And then like shortly after it, we were like, "Let's do a podcast together." So
yeah.
it even goes back to like the origins of the
I love
podcast.
that. That's
So yeah,
wonderful.
it's a perfect companion piece.
Love that. Okay, I will definitely check it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. It You'll have to let me know. You'll definitely have to
I
give me your thoughts.
Oh, I will. You won't be able to stop me.
Good. Do you have any others that you read?
Yes, I had a couple of I'm going to kind of like wrap a few of them together and I'll do
Okay.
like short blurbs, but like I was really, like I said, into these kind of historical. So there was one that was like my all-time favorite when I was a kid
Mhm.
called Mara, Daughter of the Nile by
Oh.
Eloise Jarvis McGraw. And it's about this young woman, Mara, who's a slave in ancient Egypt. But she has like a few unique talents. She's like a very talented thief. She's very charming, and she speaks Babylonian. And she like
Ooh.
gets observed one day in a marketplace, like stealing some bread, and like she gets kind of co-opted into like palace intrigue. Like there's the female pharaoh Hatshepsut is on the throne, and there are people who are trying to overthrow her. And it's kind of a bummer. This was written in like the 60s or 70s, I think. So it's like they're like, we got to take the woman down, and like I wish that was different. But like,
Yeah.
she gets kind of like
1953.
yeah, she becomes a spy for one side, but then the other side also like unknowingly she becomes a double agent. So she's working both sides. She falls in love with somebody on one side, and she's like kind of going back and forth. And it was just like I loved that book as a kid. That's the one that I think I checked out of the library so many times that like
Yeah.
when I left elementary school, because I was in a same school from kindergarten through fifth grade, and I was checking this book out like 3 times a year for like 4 years in a row. And finally the librarian was
Hmm.
like, take it with you. Like nobody else has
Yeah.
read it in 20 years. This one's yours, you know?
Yes.
So I have like the old library copy of it, which is
Oh,
pretty epic.
that is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And then another one that kind of falls under that same banner of like the historical books I was really into is called Inside the Walls of Troy by Clemence McLaren. And it is 2 POVs told from women involved in the Trojan War, which is kind of like from a YA standpoint, which is kind of cool because like now, like those Greek retellings are like so big, but like this book was
Yeah.
like back in the 90s, I think. So it's told from, Helen of Troy's point of view, who is somebody who like definitely gets kind of the raw end of the stick in terms of like how we think about her now, or like how like popular opinion thought of her of kind of, she just ran off with this dude and like started a war and stuff. And you're like, well, she was married at 13. And like, I have more empathy for her because of this book.
Yeah.
And like was feeding like baby feminist Halley. And then the other one was told from the point of view of Cassandra, who like famously in Greek myth was the one who like saw the downfall of the Trojan War, but is cursed that like she can see the future, but nobody will believe her. So like she'll be like telling people like, we can't let the Trojans in, we shouldn't be fighting this war, or we can't let the Greeks in, we shouldn't be fighting this war. And nobody believes her, and tragedy follows. But
Mm.
it was so good. I was so obsessed with those 2 books as a kid.
Yes. I feel like I would have too. Like
Yeah.
the first one, Mara, Daughter of the Nile, it's making me want to read just like any spy novel where there's the like playing both sides. Like
Oh,
so much
totally.
fun.
So much fun, so
doing that.
tense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like, it's like, even though it's a historical, which isn't the genre I write in, like in that book
Yeah.
particularly, I can see like seeds of like what I was interested in, what I'm interested in now as a writer too. Like
Yes.
really cool.
Totally. Well, and even like you're saying for little feminist Halley, but like a woman not being believed and having like very useful information that could
Totally,
change
like
the course of history.
right, like all of you guys are gonna die, but you're not gonna listen to me because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
Like, yep.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, those were great
I'm
books.
wishing I had more Greek mythology, Greek mythology is what it's listed under, but
Sure.
wishing I had more of that in my life now.
Yeah.
I do remember, oh man, that just triggered a memory. I don't know. There was something when we briefly studied Greek mythology in either feels like upper elementary school or middle school.
Totally.
Then I did get really into it, and there was definitely some like kind of retelling for kids of Who Flew Too Close to the Sun.
Oh, Icarus.
Yeah. There was some children's book that kind of like had something to do with Icarus, or not children's book,
cool.
maybe middle grade. But I did have a stint where I definitely got into it a little bit.
Love that. So you said you were born in 92. I was born in 90 or 88. So I'm a little bit older than you. And this TV show was like maybe a little bit even too old for me. So you may not remember it, but there was like a Jim Henson retelling of Greek myths TV show. And I remember it very vividly. I used to watch it every morning before school. I would get up because there was like one episode at like 6 a.m. And so I would like get up and watch it. But like they were these like really cool retellings of Greek myths in in like, I think there were sometimes puppets involved, but there were real life people
Okay.
too. It just kind of felt like it did a cool thing where it kind of made it feel like a fantasy movie, but it was like a retelling of a Greek myth.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't think I saw those. I'm not remembering anything, but I do remember getting, not that I knew the word at the time, but getting hyper fixated on like all the gods and all their stories and like
Yes.
it's very reality TV now that you think about it. Like
Oh,
messy,
totally.
messy, especially because like their gods had faults. So
Yeah.
they kind of acted like humans too.
Oh, they acted like the worst versions of humans, which I actually
Yeah.
think is kind of hilarious that like
Mhm.
they're all just like very horny and lecherous and drinking too much and like
Right.
it's so weird. And I actually think you just said that and I'm like, you should write, or should we like tag team write a book that's like a reality TV show of like the Greek gods?
We might need to.
Because I actually think that would be awesome.
Oh, that would be so cool. And
Yeah.
it feels like, so I'm sure you've been seeing it because I've been posting about it too, but you follow them as well. But like Young Rich Widows, like it could
Oh,
be a
yes.
very, we could be doing a group project, but like very
Totally.
campy idea, very
Yes.
specific idea. We should definitely think
Mhm.
about it. I'm definitely not against it. That would be funny.
Just putting that out there. Yes, no,
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with the Young Rich Widows, both like the crew and like those
Yes.
books. Like those
I
books,
know.
the audiobooks are so good.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't listened to the second one because I know no one thinks I'm like saying I dislike the book when I say I'm not an audiobook girly, but I always feel so bad when I'm like, they're just not for me.
I know. I actually struggle with audiobooks too. I
Mhm.
listen to a lot of podcasts, but I think it's
Same.
because like I'll listen to podcasts throughout my day sometimes. And if I miss something, I'm like, I missed it. You know what I mean? But if I'm listening to a book, I'd be like, I gotta go back. And like I would never get through an audiobook.
This is hilarious because I word for word said that to them in my interview with them, where I was like, guys, I swear, like, I like listening to podcasts, but that's because, like, I don't have to retain everything that, like, is
Totally.
coming through. But if I'm cleaning and listening to an audiobook, then I'm like, who is this character? I don't remember them
Right.
being introduced. So
Totally.
I'm the same
Totally.
way.
And
Every
yeah,
now and
yeah.
then I am like, what I could read more if I replace my podcast, and I'm like, no, it just doesn't hit the same for me. So
No, it
that's the
doesn't.
only
It
reason I
totally
haven't listened
doesn't.
to the second one yet. But
Yeah.
their first one just came out on book in paperback. I'm brilliant this weekend.
I hear you. It did, which is so exciting, and they're
Mhm.
so lovely, and they had like this cool launch. So like,
Mhm.
I know all of the ladies a little bit, but like Lane Fargo and I are like legit friends. She was my pitch war mentor. Like we talk on the phone all the time.
Yes.
She's fabulous, and like
Yeah.
I know they
Adore her
just
book.
had me too, and like she has another one
Mhm.
coming out in 2025 called The Favorites, which I think is actually going to be like one of the big books of the year. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I know they had this like epic 80s tastic launch for the book, and like there
Yes.
were like light up rollerblades involved. Like it just looked like so much fun.
They went all in, and like
Yes.
watching their press tour and like all of their stories, I'm like, you guys are just living the life. Like,
Oh
just
yeah.
like one of the most creative press tours I've seen. And I think it's just because
Mhm.
they're all like all in on it too. But
All
they're
in on
so
it.
cool.
Yeah, and I know I mean I know all of them are great at this, and I know Vanessa Lilly in particular is like such a great like marketing whiz. That
Hmm.
makes it sound like she's, I don't know but I know that she's
No,
like
she is.
she's
Yeah,
great. So they're all great.
she's
Yeah.
amazing. I love
Yeah.
her.
I know.
Well, I'm trying to find a segue. Don't have one.
Yeah.
But that's
Do you have any other books on your list that you wanted to
I
mention?
do. I do. I have two more.
Okay.
And so this
I have two
first
more too.
one, again, I picked it before I like pulled this book out again. But this one that I'm about to mention, the first quote that I have written down in this book is from this book. So I
Oh,
even like
amazing.
chose this before I like pulled this back out and saw that my childhood self literally wrote a quote from it. But it's called Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. You
Yes,
read
I
it?
remember. I did, but I don't really remember. But I can so vividly see the cover. Like,
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
because it's
yeah,
kind of like mixed texture
yeah.
materials, kind of in like a collage. It's pretty cool.
Hmm.
So this one, it is. It's hard to describe, so I'll just kind of read the way the synopsis is set up. Um, how about a story? Spin us a yarn.
Hmm.
Graham said. Instantly, Phoebe Winterbottom came to mind. I could tell you an extensively strange story, I warned. Oh, good, Graham said, delicious. And that is how I happened to tell them about Phoebe, her disappearing mother, and the lunatic. As Sal entertains her grandparents with Phoebe's outrageous story, her own story begins to unfold. The story of a 13-year-old girl whose only wish is to be reunited with her missing mother.
Aw.
So what I remember about it is I think the story she's telling also is kind of loosely inspired by how her life has gone. So
Yeah.
you're kind of seeing like a kid processing that as well. And
Hmm.
then there is a mystery element to it too, because you're kind of dabbling, you're going in and out of like her fictional world and her reality basically. And
Hmm.
I just remember being so emotionally attached to the character as well. And the quote that I really loved apparently as a kid is one where she says they looked like dandelions trying to pass as daffodils.
Oh, wow.
So that was what stuck out to me,
I love
which is
that.
funny and poignant and like says a lot in
Yeah.
one sentence. But
Yeah.
I just remember this is another one, just like Enchanted, where I remember the paperback book just like wearing out from how many
Hmm.
times I read it, and I just loved it. I do want to reread it.
I do too now. Like that's like really like hitting. I'm writing it
And there's
down.
some quote in it about like basically not judging anyone until you've walked two
Mm.
moons in their
Hmm.
shoes or in their it might be moccasins, might be the actual direct quote. It's also about a Native American family,
Hmm.
so
That's what I thought I remembered too. Yeah, I
yeah.
like this is a book like now I can't actually remember if I read it or not, but I certainly remember seeing it around a lot and like knowing
Hmm.
a fair amount about it. But I can't like
Yeah.
recall the story when I think about it. So now I'm like I
Hmm.
should read it. I should go back and read it for
Yeah,
sure.
I loved it. It's very character driven, so I feel like the part of me that really likes character driven
Hmm.
but like still getting reveals and you're still trying to like find some stuff out, I feel like I got some of it from this book for sure.
Totally.
um but yeah, the
I
other
love that.
one or do you have any more?
Yeah. Okay, I'll
Okay.
do my next one. So
Hmm.
this is kind of like a roundup of a series, but I was really obsessed with Tamora Pierce. I don't know if you ever read her. She was a fantasy writer, and she had lots of different series. They were called like she had created kind of a universe, the Tortle universe, and they were kind of like medieval times, but there was also magic.
Hmm.
And the first series of hers that it might even be her first series, but the one I was really obsessed with first was called the Lioness Chronicles, and it was about this young
Okay.
girl Alana who she's a twin. She's got a twin brother, and their family is like she's going to go to a convent and he's going to go learn to become a knight, and they wind up swapping because she's like I want to be a knight, I'm a badass fighter, and he's like I want to learn more about the magic that I have. So she like dresses as a boy and like goes and like trains and becomes like the king's like number one knight, but like she's
Nice.
dressing and living as a man, but she like not but she also still feels very much like a woman, and she like falls in love with like the prince and then like lets him in
Mhm.
on the secret and stuff, and like that was great. She had another series called The Immortals that was set in the same universe, which was about a girl who had the magic and power to speak to animals and somehow gets
Mhm.
involved in kind of this like battle for the kingdom. And like I was just so obsessed with those books, and like I definitely read more fantasy as a kid than I seem to read
Same.
now. But
That
I,
was
yeah,
just
it
going
kind of,
through my mind. I was like, do I have to
yeah,
read fantasy again?
I know, right? And that's honestly, I'm having the same feeling too, where I was like, God, I was so obsessed with those. What happened? Like, why
Yeah.
don't I read more of that? But yeah, it was sort of like, again, like I see the seeds of why I liked it. It was like this young, badass, like tiny feminist girl. Like, I'm not going to stay in the role that you've prescribed for
Yes.
me. There was also like, horny shenanigans with the prince,
Yes.
like, you know, all ticking all of my boxes.
Yes.
So,
It's like
yeah.
it's also very Mulan and also very She's
Yes.
the
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that. So like Taming of the Shrew. Is that what that one was
Totally.
about? Yeah.
I think it's
And
12th
then
Night.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was reminding me of both of those. I love those
Totally.
stories.
Me too.
They're
Me
always so
too.
fun.
I
When you
know.
said Tamora Pierce and then you said she had multiple, I was like, wait, I did, but I think she started getting recommended to me after and
Hmm.
this was not on my list. Again, these are all just popping up. There was a book called a series called Into the Land of the Unicorns that I got
Ooh,
so obsessed with.
I'm writing
And it
that
was
down.
like this girl named Kara.
Hmm.
Let's see. Well, it says as each chime sounds, Kara climbs faster up the steep bell tower. 11. She must be on the roof when the next bell tolls. 12. With a deep breath and only half believing she will survive, Kara jumps off the church roof and into Luster, the land of the unicorns. In Luster, Kara meets many wonderful creatures, but the most magnificent of all is Lightfoot, a rebellious young unicorn. Kara's brand of friends comes to include a hairy creature named the Dimblethumb and the monkey
Hmm.
like Squidgem. Together,
Hmm.
they set out to reach the unicorn queen before the mysterious man who is following them does, to prevent the destruction of all unicorns forever. I think
Okay,
it's
I
like
love that.
kind of Narnia-esque,
Hmm.
but with unicorns. Because then like it's a series, and I remember reading Song of the Wanderer, which was the next one, and then Dark Whispers and The Last Hunt. But
Okay.
so cool. She just like jumped into a fantasy world. I was
That's
very obsessed
amazing.
with it.
And also, when you first read that, I was like, did she just jump off and die and have like a hallucination in the last moments of life? But like, that's a dark
Yes.
place to take a children's
Right. As
book,
adults,
you know?
that might be how we perceive it.
Totally. It also makes me think of, did you ever see the movie? And again, this came out in mid 80s. So it was like, came out before I was born, certainly before you were born, but like The Last Unicorn, it is like a notoriously dark fantasy movie. Like back when they were making fantasy movies that they were like, we gotta frighten some children. And like, there's
Yeah.
like, it's got a great
Oh,
cast. It's like Faye Dunaway and
oh
Armia
wow.
Farrow, maybe actually. And Jeff Bridges, and it's like this, the last unicorn alive on earth gets turned into a woman and is like trying to find the rest of the unicorns, like where have they gone, and like
Whoa.
it's on this magical quest, and then there's this like red bull that's chasing her, and like
Uh-huh.
it is very scary and dark. And I try to talk to people about this all the time, and like seemingly no one else has watched this movie because I'll say it to my friends and they're like, sounds like a fever
Oh.
dream you had, you know, like
Right. Oh man.
but
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but you have my attention.
yes, and it's got a phenomenal soundtrack. Yeah. So just saying, if you ever see that out in the wild, might be worth a watch if you appreciate some unicorn lore.
Yeah. Apparently it really is dawning on me. I read a little bit more fantasy, but I do think there was more like, as I feel like a lot of ours, even your historical fiction,
Mhm.
it's almost like there was more room in those genres for females to be
Yes,
strong leads, where like
totally.
not to be sad or say this is exactly it, but like in reality, maybe that wasn't as possible or as thought of.
Totally, totally. Or that, like, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there, that there were spaces, or like that even things could be more addressed head on from a different angle. Like a kind of maybe like contemporary YA couldn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily get it sort of like like the Alana books, the Lioness Chronicles or whatever those were called by Tamora Pierce, like, you know, is set in a different time, and it's like a time when women can't do this stuff, but it's still like speaking to something that we're going through today, and like because they're coming
Right.
at it from an angle, like maybe could weave that in there in a way that like would have felt
Mm-hmm.
preachy if it was just
Yeah.
like a contemporary, you know?
Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm like, I nothing against A Court of Thorns and Roses. I know that is like the big fantasy one right now.
Totally.
I know that it kind of gets a little bit more into turning into like fairy smut, which is part, not that I'm against it either. It's just part of why like I haven't wanted to dive into a series that long when like I know
Sure.
some of the books is mostly that.
Hmm.
So but I want to look at other fantasy now that we're having this conversation. I'm like, what, maybe there is stuff out there that like I just haven't tried. And maybe it would be A Court of Thorns and Roses. You never know.
Totally, totally. I actually haven't read the Akatar books yet
Yeah.
either. Even though, despite, you know, based on our conversation today, I think it's right up my alley because it's horny
Right.
fairies. But like,
Right.
yeah,
That's what everyone says is like basically like fairy smut, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. You do you. I did have like a funny run in with my friend. Sorry, Jess, to call you out on a podcast, but a couple months ago we were going to like our friends, like a birthday dinner for our mutual friend, and she
Yeah.
picked me up in her car, and I get in and she's been listening to like the ACOTAR books on audiobook, and it's like an extremely dirty part, and so I get in and I'm just hearing like the most filthy things, and I was like,
You're like, you have
well,
my
how's this
attention.
dinner gonna go? Yeah, like what are we doing? And she was like, oh, sorry.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it
I
was
like
pretty
see
great.
TikToks of that sometimes when people are like, when I forget that like this is like linked up to my car and my friend gets in with me.
Totally.
So you
And you're
actually had
just
it
like,
happen.
yep. Oh, we did. And I'll be honest with you, I was like, we can keep it on. Like,
You're
let's
right.
listen.
I'm fine listening.
Yeah, let's just figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next book on your list?
So I have a couple from this author. I got
Okay.
way into Madeline L'Engle. A
Oh
Wrinkle in
yeah.
Time.
Hmm.
I loved A Wrinkle in Time so much. Um, basically, one wild night, a strange visitor comes to the Murray house and beckons Meg, her brother Charles Wallace, and their friend Calvin O'Keefe on a most dangerous and extraordinary adventure, one that will threaten their lives and our universe.
Hmm.
It's actually a part of a quintet, five
Hmm.
books.
Hmm.
Um, but definitely like my first experience with time travel, which I
Mm.
still, oh my gosh, I still love Blake Crouch's Dark Matter.
Yes.
Definitely still one of my favorite books. Not directly time travel, but it's like
Hmm.
multi universes and
Hmm.
stuff. So, yeah, I don't know I can't really remember all of the adventures that they necessarily go on, but I still love a book where you play with time. And
Hmm.
for my second show and tell here,
Yay.
then when I wrote a book in fourth grade, I wrote a book called Time Cave.
Oh my
So
God,
like
amazing.
it even informed what I basically wanted to write. And it's kind of funny. I'll include some of these here, but like definitely an author, not an illustrator, but that's my time machine.
It kind of looks like what's it, like the Doctor Who but
Oh,
like
you're
red,
right.
like it, yeah.
I can't think of what it's called, but
Yeah,
yes,
what
you're
is it
right.
called? The TARDIS.
The TARDIS, yeah.
Yes.
And this was like my depiction of them moving in time was just some circles around them. So,
Amazing. Amazing. Oh my God, that's so
but
cool.
I know I really do like books that play with time still.
Uh-huh.
That typically works for me. But she also had a book that I reread over and over again called A Ring of Endless Light.
Mm.
Um, that actually is kind of similar to the Into the Land of the Unicorns a little bit because
Mm.
it's like connections with animals. But it's basically this girl named Vicky. I'm pretty sure this was turned into a Disney Channel movie as well. So this girl named Vicky, she lives in New York City with her family, the Austins, but they like have to go out to spend the summer on this really small island where her grandpa lives because he's sick and his condition
Mm-hmm.
is basically getting worse. So they're just going to spend the whole summer with him. But then she also finds herself in a little bit of a love triangle with, I think she's like 15 or 16, maybe older, with Zachary Gray, a troubled
Ooh,
bad boy,
of course.
and Adam
Ray, because
Eddington.
he's neither light nor dark, like he's
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
middle morally. Yeah.
yeah, he's gray. And but then she also has this like friendship growing with Adam Eddington because he is either a he's helping at like a marine biologist place.
Hmm.
And so he's been asking her to help with his research on dolphins. um I'm gonna give spoilers away. She finds out she can talk to dolphins like
Amazing.
telepathically. And so
Amazing.
then it's also like kind of like a coming of age story
Hmm.
just with all of that going on as well. But I think I watched the movie a lot. I think I read this book a lot. Something about this
I
book just worked for me.
I love that. I
Mhm.
think I watched the movie too. Was it
Yeah,
Misha Barton
I think
played the
so. I'm
girl?
looking it up.
Yeah, on the like Disney classics that they
Yes.
would do like every Friday night or whatever.
Yes, it is. It's Misha. And
Yes.
Jared Padalecki was Zachary Gray, the bad
Oh,
boy.
yeah.
And Ryan Merriman was Adam Eddington.
Oh, Ryan Merriman. I feel like he was one of those guys who was like always in
Yeah,
the Disney movies.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I was so fixated on this movie
I remember
and
being
the book.
super into it too. I don't know that I ever
Mhm.
read the book actually, but maybe I should go back and read it. But I remember really liking the movie too.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was really good. She's
so good.
such an awesome author too. She wrote so many books.
Oh, totally. And like deep classics, like A Wrinkle in
Mhm.
Time, I would say is like one of the like most iconic like children's books
Yeah,
like ever written, you know? Like
right.
yeah, deep
Yeah,
impact
she's so cool.
for sure. Amazing.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
any more?
I have one last one,
Nice.
which uh, this book, I don't remember reading. It didn't have quite the same emotional impact on me as some of the other ones that I've mentioned,
Mhm.
but it had this really cool conceit that I still think about as an adult. And it was called From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by
Yes.
E.L. Konigsberg. And so the story about this one, and I can see it's ringing a bell for you,
Yep.
is that there's this girl who runs away from home. She doesn't feel appreciated. And she and her younger brother go and they live at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And they get kind
Mhm.
of embroiled in this mystery around this painting. And they're trying to
Yeah.
like do research and discover if it's like a long lost Michelangelo painting. And they like
Yeah.
find this woman who had donated it. And like she has like all the answers to the mystery. But what I remember most vividly was
Mhm.
just that like a big part, I guess what we would call now, like if you're breaking out by beats, like the fun and games beat, is that they're living in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I was like, goals, you know, like still to this day,
Yeah.
kind of like goals. Like I'm not like they
Mhm.
used to, what they would do, as I remember, was at closing time, they would go into the bathroom and they would like get on a toilet stall and like pull their feet up so that nobody could see them. And I was like convinced that like, yep, you
That
could
would
just stay
work.
in a museum. That would work. Totally would work. I'm not
Yes.
sure it wouldn't. I haven't tried it. Maybe I
Me
should. You know
neither.
what I mean? Like, but it was and then they would like go and like sleep in like one of the beds or exhibits or something, and it was so
Mhm.
cool. And I
Yeah.
actually, this is like I hadn't made this connection, but when I first moved to LA years ago, one of the first things that I did was the Natural History Museum would host adult sleepovers, and so I went and did that, and it was really cool. So I did get to sleep in a museum
Oh
for a
my
night once, which
gosh.
was fun. Yeah,
That is such a cool idea. Like,
it
good for
really
them.
was. It was, and so you had like scavenger hunts, you had like different things to keep you like occupied, and like
Mhm.
it was really cool. You got to sleep in like one of the exhibits, and then at like 7 a.m. they'd be like, "All right, you got to get out because we got to open the museum."
Yeah.
But it was really cool. But they no longer do that because too many people were doing inappropriate things in various
I
parts of the
wondered.
museum.
The
So,
thrill of
but
it,
I'm like,
man.
bring it back, you know?
No.
It
That
was
is
really
such a cool
fun.
idea, though.
Yeah, totally. It was fun.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
definitely when you said it, I was like, I even knew the weird like E.L. Konigsberg name when you
yes.
said it. I was like, yes, yes, I did read this one. And the
Yeah.
cover,
Mhm.
it was so cool. I do remember like also like getting really intrigued by the idea of like staying in a Walmart overnight
Oh, yeah,
or
totally. Like
like
what was that from?
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Yeah, there was they made it into a movie with Natalie Portman, something
Oh
about
yeah, where she
home.
lives in one.
Yeah, she like lives in a Walmart while she's like pregnant. I don't remember
We're
exactly
gonna
what it's
get it.
called, but
We're gonna get it. Where the Heart Is.
Where the Heart Is. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that one. It is so interesting. And then like Night at the Museum, also kind of a derivative as
Yeah,
well.
totally.
It's just like
Yeah.
fun to think of like being in places overnight that you
Yeah.
can't or either or that you aren't traditionally at.
Totally. Like getting to live in a different world sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has also been kind of a theme.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What
Yeah.
about you? Do you have any more on your list you wanted to
I don't.
mention?
Those
Okay, we
were the
did it.
rest of mine. I mean, I had some bonus ones even
Mhm.
too that came up that I probably would have even thought of. That was like
I
a
know, me
fun little
too.
trip down memory lane.
I know. I loved this. Thank you for having this
Yeah,
conversation with me. This was so fun.
I loved it. Well, I'm glad that it's crazy how it all comes back from like you asking me the question,
Totally.
what do I want to know about more bookstagrammers? And then you're like, what if we did an episode? So it's kind of it's a meta episode.
It is, but I'm so glad we did. And I'm so glad you asked that. I mean, I was like, yeah. And then it made me think about like books that I've loved. And then we got to have this conversation. Like, this was just really fun. It was really fun to
Yeah.
get to do this and talk about it. And I kind of, now it's going to like live farther forward in my brain, which I like too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone's listening and one loved any of the books, I think both of us would happily DM and talk to you about
Oh,
them.
for sure. Slide into my
Or
DMs.
if you have any other random memories of like, oh, I loved this one. Did you guys read this one? Definitely let us
Totally.
know about that too.
Yes, please, please, please.